timely moment for us to be together today as we contemplate the ramifications of the issues that Damon has articulated with regards to the nexus of poverty, blight, crime, drugs, gangs, and unemployment. I can talk about this for an hour. To try and condense my thoughts in a summarized statement of 3 minutes is challenging. Let me simply say that we live in many different Americas, and there are many different Houstons. All of us don't reside in the same Houston. As the councilman expressed, over 500,000 Houstonians live below the poverty line. And that's an extremely shameful indictment on the fourth largest city in America, the energy capital of the world, to say that we have over 500,000 people who are below the poverty line, and most of those persons are working people. We're not dealing with trifling people who are not interested in work. We're dealing with working people, most of whom are people of color. That is a dynamic that I think needs to be brought into the discussion, although we're not dealing with this from a cultural and ethnic perspective. The reality is most of those persons are people of color. Poverty is grinding. Poverty is an illness. It's a disease within our American culture. We live in the richest nation of the world. We're spending $195 million a day in Iraq, and yet poverty abounds at an extent today in the 21st century that is unbelievable. Let me simply say this. The dehumanizing of any group of persons, the devaluing of any group of persons based on their location, based on their race, based on their place of origin, is a sickness within our society that is manifested in public policies that continue to deprive working people and the poor of an opportunity to participate in this America and to become wealthy. President Bush's presently proposed budget will cut funding for health care, will cut more funding to Medicare, Medicaid, will cut funding to Head Start. And so we continue to enact policies that exacerbates the issues of poverty. If we're going to really do something about this situation, we've got to deal with it at the policy level. The city of Houston right now is debating an ordinance that's called pay to play, which would challenge every vendor that has a contract with the city of Houston to provide health care for the people that work for those companies. These are the kinds of policies that we have to enact if we're going to really change the way our people live. And poverty impacts everything that's been mentioned, from prison to education and everything else. Let me simply say this. When we talk about HIV/AIDS and other diseases in our community, poverty exacerbates those issues. And so if we're going to change the way we live, the way we learn, the way we look, the way we eat, we've got to deal with economics. Let me try to wrap my statement up because I've got a lot I'm trying to say in a brief moment. I believe that we should be enacting policies that give every person an equal opportunity to become a wealthy person. When I say wealthy, I'm not speaking simply economically. Intellectual wealth is equal access to equitable education. We have schools in urban centers that are funded at 50% of what suburban schools are being funded at. That's a problem with intellectual wealth. We're not educating people in inner cities. There's physical wealth. That means health care. If people are not healthy, they cannot learn, they cannot work. And then, of course, there's economic wealth, employment and access to entrepreneurship. We've got a major challenge on our hands that is going to take a coalition to work with. It's going to take a united Houston, a united America to work with. On next Saturday, we're launching a march and rally. We've got about 25 organizations that have come to the table to say, let's challenge public policy at the local, state, and federal levels. CHIP, children's health care programs, Let's challenge the government to increase funding for CHIP. Let's challenge our government agencies to increase funding for food stamps as opposed to decreasing funding for food stamps. Let's challenge government at the level of policy. And I think until we start dealing with policies, we won't affect practices. And if you don't affect policy, you don't change practice. If you don't change practice, you don't change outcomes. And we'll continue to see these numbers skyrocketing. By the way, the Institute for Public Policy have issued a report that says to be middle class in America today, you cannot earn $50,000 to $75,000 a year. You got to earn $130,000 a year. That line has moved. And most of us are operating under the myth that when you earn $30,000 or $40,000, you're in the middle class. That is a myth. Most of us today are in the lower class who are still thinking we're in the middle class, and that's why ends just won't seem to meet. I'm delighted to be here today. I want to challenge us to think about what Peter Brown has said in the organizing of one coalition to say to Houston, but not just to Houston, to the state and to the federal level, we have got to change policies that continue to exacerbate poverty, because poverty creates crime. It fuels crime. It fuels drugs. It fuels all the things that we say we don't want in our community. Finally, prison. 74% of illegal drug users in America are white. 13% of illegal drug users in America are black. Why is it then that 1 million of prisoners are African American men, and 70% of those are there because of drugs? And so when we deal with these kinds of realities, brothers and sisters, we've got to get to the root of the matter. The root of the matter, we've got the wrong faces on the problem, and then we've got the wrong faces on the solutions. In this room, these are the faces of the solution. Let's put the right face on the problem.